Spirit. Okay.
I love this.
Oh yeah,
Viva on the street. I really love these videos. Did they just start with you walking your? I mean, I'm going to play a little bit of one because I enjoy this.
All right, people, you thought the Viva on the streets were going to end? They're never going to end. I will be doing Viva on the streets. I don't know, until... What do you think? Your paws are disgusting. You just touched me in the face. This Viva on the street, it's about the vaccine passports, which are now mandatory as of September 2nd.
So I'm going to mute this because I have you here live. These look like these were inspired. Yeah, just you're going on a walk with your dog and you're like, hey, this is a good time to talk.
No, when it happened is, I hope I remember my own life right. It was, I think, January of 2021 when our government, François Legault, of the Coalition Avenir de Québec, which is the Coalition for the Future of Quebec, but the acronym in French is CAQ, which is almost, it's CACA is what the government has become. But they said they're going to, a year after this flipping pandemic, almost, they say we have to go into curfew now in January. Winter in Quebec is depressing enough because it gets dark at 4:15 in the afternoon.
Oh.
So they say we're going to implement a curfew. It's going to be a 1-month curfew, like it was a 2-week lockdown to flatten the curve. And the only way you could get out of your house is if you had a dog, because our government is not stupid. They're not idiots. They're not nincompoops. They knew that if you have a dog surely should be able to get out of the house after 8 o'clock, even if humans can't. So they made an exception in the law for dogs, but only dogs, no cats.
Did a lot more people get dogs because of this reason? I mean, I know a lot of people did for the pandemic in general.
No joke and no question. A lot of people got dogs. I was looking for a rescue at the time we were looking for a rescue to replace a little bastard dog we had to give back to the breeder. We couldn't get one, and we fluked by getting Winston. But no, a lot of people got rescues, and then a lot of people are abandoning them now because now there's not a waiting list. Now there's a lineup of dogs to be rescued, whereas a year and a half ago there were none. But so the Viva on the streets, it's like I'm gonna do a Viva on the street because this is not going to last a month. This stupid curfew, which our own government says there's no scientific basis to show that it's effective to fight a virus, but we're still going to do it for a month just to flatten the curve so that we don't overwhelm the healthcare. In January, the same way we said 2 weeks in March, I said I'm going to do a Viva on the street documenting this because it's not going to last a month. It didn't. It lasted 5 months.
Whew.
And after I had done maybe I'd say 18 of these. After they lifted the curfew, I was like, forget it. I'm still going to do these things. When I don't have enough time in the day to get a vlog out, I can still find 10 minutes to rant on the street like a lunatic, holding my dog, walking my dog, and walking down the street. And they become the great sort of, the jam-packed 10 minutes of the latest updates in Quebec or ranting on a particular subject. And that was on the vaccine passports, which start in Quebec apparently as of tomorrow.
Whoo. Wow. I've heard mixed reviews on, what people think of Canadians. Some people say, oh, they're too nice in general. I mean, I'm getting the Americanized gossip version. Oh, Canadians are too nice. They're pussies. They're not standing up for themselves. They're going to be like Australia soon. And then I hear your content and I go, all right, well, this is not the case. Like you're informed, you're passionate.
There's two sides to it. Americans say that about Canadians, and then Canadians up here, if you're following our election, you might have noticed that Justin Trudeau has been getting heckled on the streets wherever he goes. And the daytime radio, which is liberal to say the least, says, oh, the American politics have come up here. Now, this is not Canadian. We're polite. We don't tell politicians to go F themselves on the street. And I was like,
you can and should. Yes.
I don't view the world that way. Canadians historically have a different history, have a different origin than Americans. And I've truly grown to appreciate the impact that has had on First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, and overall visions of freedom and what it means to be free and what risks one is prepared to accept to deal with the burden of freedom. But I don't think we're polite because we have crime, we have rudeness here, but we are docile as a population to the point where we seem to want more, at the very least in Quebec, of curfews. It takes a lot before the Canadians and the Quebecers start saying, yeah, okay, maybe now with a vaccine passport that's going to require double vaccination and then potentially boosters every 6 months in order to have a valid passport in order to get into a gym. Maybe that's too much. And even still, we had 100,000 people in the streets protesting, but even still, a lot of people are very happy letting the government run every micro aspect of their life. But we are definitely more docile, more subservient, and more deferential to the government and to the courts than Americans are. And I do think it has something to do with origins, history, the creation of the American experiment. But I do think I have a good lay of the land. I think people have had enough. A lot of people had enough. And I think we're starting to see a lot of it now.
Yeah, I've been talking about this, and I think there's so many examples in the US too. Like, I've been angry for a long time, and I'm just like, what is it going to take? I feel like every person needs to reach their, I guess I've been calling it like their freedom rock bottom. Like, when are things going to get bad enough for people to realize, like, oh, we have to take action, we have to take to the streets? And I guess the vax passports has become that for a lot of people in both the US and Canada.
It's an interesting thing. Like, people have to hit their freedom rock bottom. But anybody who, if you've never seen the movie Owning Mahoney, the great gambling movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman, but there is this idea that, the gambler, not the gambler's paradox, but sort of a gambler's loss, where you've lost so much, you're ashamed to admit and recognize what you've lost. And so you basically say, well, it went to a good cause anyhow. Like,
that's what people say when they vote for Biden. They're like, "Oh, well, at least it's not Trump." Like, that's
that's it. You say like, "Oh," and now they're going to say, "Well, it's so bad now, but it would have been worse." It's not the gambler's fallacy, but it's gambler's losses, where you've lost so much and you're never going to get it back, that you have to find a justification, a cosmic, benevolent justification for the loss with the money. It's going to a casino, it's going to help the reserve, it's going to help, it's going to go to charity. In Canada, we have casinos on reserves that help the reserves. We have government casinos, basically, I just paid a little extra tax this year. And people rationalize their losses that way. Here, people have lost their freedoms. And I think, some are getting angry, some are starting to protest, and others recognize they're never getting them back. And so they have to rationalize the loss. And it's for the greater good. It's like, I paid a little extra in taxes this year, except I paid them with my civil rights and liberties. So what can you do? Bad day.
They're telling themselves it's in the name of safety. It's in the name of public health.
Greater good. I mean, I literally heard our radio hosts on a daytime radio today refer to it as, well, it's for the greater good, unquestioningly, as if the greater good is lockdowns, as if the greater good is vaccine passports, and not as if the greater good might be living with arguably extra certain risks, but with the undeniable benefit of individual freedoms, which itself is the greater good. I said that there is no greater good than individual freedoms, because that is what gave birth to this beautiful, nation that we have. And right now we're seeing what's happening in Australia. I don't know if it was ever free, but it's the death of any freedom in Australia and we're seeing it in real time. It's mind-blowing.
It's really crazy. And if it were about health, they'd be subsidizing gym memberships, vitamins, cleanses, right? They wouldn't be subsidizing, basically, I watched your video. The Canadian government is going to pay $1 billion to create an app to track basically like vaccination.
Who the hell even knows what it is? $1 billion for a COVID vaccine passport app fund. And like, the government talks about spending $1 billion like it's theirs. Like, they're going, I'm just going to go in my back pocket. They're going into my pocket and telling me how they're spending my money as though they've earned it. And how does an app cost $1 billion? I mean, it is government corruption through and through, and it's the greatest way to extort or coerce provincial cooperation. As it worked exactly that way with Ontario, Ontario, like Justin Trudeau himself, had been anti-passport before he became pro-passport. But you dangle $1 billion, and everyone's like, "Well, I'd like to get my share of that." But
I want a hot tub. Yeah,
I want to have a $300 million program in my province for an app that's going to cost much less, and then we'll hire administrators and people to advertise the app. It's laundering taxpayer dollars in a metaphoric, not criminal sense. For the
just government fluffing. Yeah. And it's similar to the US, where it's like, oh, well, the government is not saying they're mandating, they're making the private companies enforce it. And then they're like, all right, well, we'll help you guys out. We'll pay for this app. And it's clearly you're seeing right through that. No,
and actually you mentioned it, and I had to mention no medical advice. I do not express medical opinions. Last year, a year and a half ago, I tweeted out, after all this isolation, after keeping people away from the germs that they would naturally be exposed to, I can only imagine how bad the next flu season is going to be. Lo and behold, who would have thunk that keeping developing kids in virtual bubbles. And that's how the CNN article referred to it. Who would have thunk that it might actually cause bigger problems? And now we're apparently out of the States. We're seeing pediatric wards being filled, not with COVID-related illnesses in kids, but other virus, respiratory illnesses, rhinoviruses, because these kids have been disinfected, isolated, not getting exercise, not getting vitamin D, which we know the benefits of. The government is basically saying, do all of the wrong things, and who could have foreseen it coming except anybody with half a brain? The old joke is that the difference between God and a lawyer is that God doesn't think he's a lawyer. Lawyers tend to think they know everything about everything, but there is a certain amount of critical analysis that goes into being a reasonable lawyer, where you can ask the right questions and just put two and two together. And a lot of other people are saying, this is going to be bad because you have to be exposed to a certain amount. It's one thing to protect against one virus in as much as it's even humanly possible, but collateral damage is a real thing. But when you're not counting it, you never have to factor it in. But we're seeing it now in real time.
And and I've always known that over sanitizing is a bad thing, but fear makes people, I guess, forget their common sense. Right. It's like the vitamin D exposure, exercise, keeping yourself healthy is basically the biggest FU you can do to the government right now.